Time to take a coding break. Howdy, coding pros, and welcome back to the Coding Break podcast. I am your coding break coach, medical coding instructor, and coding break reminder here to remind you to take a coding break. So, on this coding break episode, I want to delve a little deeper into AI as it relates to medical coding. And what I mean by going a little deeper is it mentioned AI is to free us up or free up medical coders to tackle complex cases or complex tasks. And I want to delve a little deeper into defining exactly what are complex tasks, because complex or the complexity of medical coding could differ for different coders, right? One task may be easy or for one coder, and it may be complex for another one. So when we talk about complexity in medical coding or complexity tasks, oftentimes we focus on the specialties, like the healthcare or medical coding specialties, such as maybe one, I would say one that comes to mind is the vascular system, because there's so many different vascular road mappings, and the surgeon or the doctor does stop and go, may do work, or they may just stop and observe in a particular vascular branch. So yeah, it becomes a little complex, and there's codes for each of those. And so again, when we talk about complex tasks, again, that's typically the reference again as to the specialty that is coded. And so, of course, I went on AI, and I wanted to see what their thought was on complex tasks. Like, what exactly does AI or artificial intelligence consider to be complex tasks? And of course, it did list certain specialties, but it also talked about the different roles that we would evolve into. It also talked about analyzing data, like we're able to free up time to analyze more data. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought medical coding was analyzing data, from a coding aspect, right? But that's just me. So it listed a couple, or I would say at least 3 different specialties that again, AI considered to be complex. And so, of course, it had interventional radiology, and then radiology as itself, and then it had oncology and nephrology, and then it had orthopedics. When I guess look at the list that it AI compiled as far as like the complex specialties, again, like, as I mentioned, vascular interventional radiology does kind of fall in line with vascular and even cardiology specialties. So yeah, that can be a little complex, especially if you're new to the medical coding industry, and if that's your first specialty to tackle, it can become a little overwhelming. And again, and it may not be, because I do know coders who went straight into like interventional vascular cardiology from the beginning, and it was fine because they were very ambitious and eager to learn. Whereas, again, another individual, it may become a little bit overwhelming or too complex for them to start off with. Orthopedic, I would say orthopedic is very practical because it is surgery. So you're going to fix a broken bone, right? You're going, it's very practical, to me it is. But it could be very complex to another individual. Because of all the bones, especially like in the smaller joints, like the feet, and the fingers, and I would say fingers, toes, wrists, ankles. It could be tedious because of the small bone structures. But again, I always thought or considered orthopedic coding to be a very practical specialty, because again, you're fixing broken bones. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. As far as like oncology and nephrology, yes, because you're dealing with drugs as it relates to chemotherapy. You're also dealing with radiation oncology as it relates to, the measurement of how much, the dosage amount of radiation that an individual should receive toward their tumors, the cancer, the side effects. You don't want to over expose an individual to radiation therapy to their detriment. There's in I worked in radiation oncology, so I understand like at that time there were several processes and several hands into ensuring that treatment was safe for the patient. You want to make sure the right amount of radiation. Their radiation is directed toward a specific tumor or cancer. You have like your dosimetries. There's a lot of hands on or hands involved in radiation therapy. So that is a process. So that can be considered a complex specialty, and I would consider it a complex specialty. As far as nephrology is concerned, I'm not really sure. I dabbled into nephrology, but not as much as I have been in the oncology aspect of medical coding. I'm sure that there are steps. I know like dialysis and things of that nature. And then you have other chronic conditions, as mentioned via AI, that needs to be managed, especially if they are chronic or in a severe state when it comes to the illness or the condition, and you have to consider like the treatment options and things of that nature to manage or to eradicate those particular health conditions. So yes, so a lot of those things can be more complex. Perhaps I would say the way that I read AI or how AI spelled it out, more so like maybe perhaps you as a coder may have, if you're coding a specific specialty or niche within the medical coding industry, perhaps you kind of follow that individual patient or patients from the beginning of their encounter or visit with that provider, and you still may be coding like their follow-up visits, their treatments, and things of that nature, so you kind of get an idea of the process or the journey of the patient's health condition, and you may see where it is improving or it is becoming more chronic or severe. So again, you are assessing the data or analyzing the data in that aspect. And then let's see here from administrative aspect, I did mention in previous episodes as it relates to the auditing, the compliance. Again, I always consider coders to be auditors, especially when we started getting into these more technological practice management systems, such as CAC coding, and so we have to be auditing because again, CAC is like the beginning form of AI, where the system automatically assigns the code based upon the documentation it has picked up or retrieved in the system. And then we as coders have to just ensure that the code that was picked up or the information that was selected, that it is accurate. So our coding roles have been evolving into auditing roles over time. And so, of course, like I said, that I guess that would be considered a complex task because you have to assess that information. You have to do your research. You have to ensure that the codes and, again, the information that the tools or AI tools are selecting is the correct information to report to the insurance carrier. Not only for reimbursement, but just making sure that it is the correct information, that we're not erroneously assigning diagnoses or diagnosis codes to individuals when it's, again, incorrect or inaccurate. This has happened. There are cases where this has happened. But nonetheless, you want to make sure that we are assigning the right codes to these patient encounters. And so so that's pretty much what Google AI gave me as it relates to like what they consider to be more, I guess, more complex scenarios or complex tasks to put our focus on as it relates to the medical coding, how I guess medical coding roles are pivoting in this era of AI. And as I mentioned in the previous episode, that AI has always been around. It's just given the name AI, artificial intelligence. It has always been in the works for years prior to what it is as of today. So if you know or if you think of any other complex tasks as it relates to the medical coding industry, please feel free to share. Again, this is the list I just talked about was given by AI, then again, or shall I say, also I will say that complexity will vary for different individuals. One may consider it to be very simple or easy, and another individual may consider it to be more complex or more overwhelming. And it could be someone who's new to the coding industry, or it could be someone who's pivoting into a different specialty or a different role that it could become complex or simple. So there's a lot of variables out there that can be considered when it comes to complex tasks. So but nonetheless, we are here and we're going to weather the storm as we did with ICD-10 conversion. We can get through this. So that's all that I have for this coding break. Again, as always, code on, and if I think of any other information or any other topics that will relate or have an impact or influence on the medical coding industry, I will be sure to share that with you. So that's all that I have for this coding break, and as always, code on until the next coding break. So until the next time, toodles.